The day the Deathworld girl gave her first warning, 3 classmates laughed, and one of them never laughed again. It started in the upper dome of Arithon Station, a place built for harmony, diplomacy, and friendly competition. But the station's gleaming glass gardens and floating lecture spheres weren't designed for someone like Mara. They weren't built for someone raised on a world where insects carried venom strong enough to paralyze a bison and storms tore entire valleys into the sea. Most students here had never seen an actual predator. Mara had seen them circling her village rooflines since childhood. She didn't want trouble. She said that often enough it almost sounded like a lie, even to herself. That morning, she stepped off the lift into the orbital anthropology hall, doing what she always did, counting exits, scanning faces, listening for breath patterns that didn't match calm. The dome shimmered with prism lights from the star shield panels overhead, refracting galaxies in slow-moving spirals across the floor. Students floated between seating rings using the low-grav tethers that dipped like spider silk. It was peaceful. It was beautiful. It was deceptive. Mara walked in quietly and felt the room shift. There was a ripple, tiny, but unmistakable. Not because she was human. There were dozens of humans aboard Arithon. No, this tension came from something else, something she carried without realizing, the way she moved. Weight low. Shoulders loose. Eyes that never fully relaxed. Every instinct shaped by a world the rest of the galaxy labeled. Category red, non-recreational. She took a seat near a pillar covered in iridescent vines. The vines sensed her proximity and curled slightly away. She pretended not to notice. Across the room, a group of students whispered. Mara didn't intend to listen, but whispers echo strangely when low gravity thins the air. "That's her," one said. "The red zone transfer. Thought they banned those." "No, they just strongly discouraged them." Someone chuckled, the kind of laugh that vibrates with superiority, not humor. Mara exhaled slowly and adjusted her sleeves. The fabric concealed faint white patterns on her arms, scars left by a creature that hunted entirely by heat signature. She'd survived it at 9. She'd survived everything since. But survival wasn't something she'd boasted about. Especially not here. The instructor, a feathered Thalorian named Vesh, glided into the dome and began the lesson with a soft hum. Floating hollow scripts formed in the air, casting pale blue across the students' faces. That was when Toren decided to make his move. He was taller than Mara by a head, built like most Grivari, dense muscle layered over a mineralized exoskeleton. Grivari weren't cruel by nature, but they were competitive, territorial, and painfully unaware of danger signals not shouted directly into their faces. Toren had been studying Mara since the term began. She felt his eyes long before he approached. When she looked up, he was already leaning over her desk. "You're from that Deathworld, right?" he asked, loud enough for half the dome to hear. A hush fell. Mara nodded once. "Yes." "What's it called again?" he pressed. "Terrace? Terra? Terror?" A couple of students snickered. "Terra Prime," she corrected quietly. "Oh," Toren said. "Prime. Fancy." He grinned, flashing the metallic ridge teeth Grivari developed in adolescence. "Tell me something. Is it true you people fight animals for fun?" Mara didn't answer. It wasn't worth correcting him. She simply straightened her posture, a slow, deliberate shift, one that any Terran would recognize as a warning. Toren didn't. He reached out and tapped her shoulder as if testing a theory. On Arithon, a gesture like that meant nothing. On Terra Prime, touching someone who wasn't expecting it could end in blood. "Don't do that," Mara said softly. The room stiffened. Even the vines behind her paused, sensing the change in air tension. Toren laughed. "Relax, Deathworld girl. I'm just curious." "You touched me without asking," she replied. "That was your first warning." 3 classmates snorted with open amusement. One clapped mockingly, like she'd told a joke. Toren puffed up, emboldened by the sound of their laughter. "What happens after the first warning?" he asked, placing his hand on her desk. His voice dropped to a taunting whisper. "Do you bite?" The second hand came down toward her shoulder. Mara didn't think. She reacted. Her fingers moved in a small, effortless arc, so subtle most students didn't see it. She intercepted his wrist with the gentlest pressure, redirecting the motion just a centimeter off course. But the minor redirection in low gravity sent his balance spinning backward. Toren stumbled 3 full steps, startled, grasping at floating desks. The laughter died instantly. Vesh, the instructor, paused mid-sentence. His feathers ruffled in shock. Mara, he said carefully, is everything. He touched me twice, she said, not loudly, but with a calm finality that made every species in the dome straighten. Toren regained his footing, cheeks burning with humiliation. You're exaggerating. You didn't even do anything. Inside Mara, something ancient stirred. Not anger. Not fear. Recognition. Because this wasn't the first time someone had ignored her warnings. On Terra Prime, ignoring warnings got people killed. She swallowed hard, trying to hold that memory back. Stay away from me, she said. That's the safest thing you can do. Toren scoffed. Or what? You'll spin me again? The class murmured. Some in disbelief. Some in fascination. One in genuine fear. He took a step toward her. Mara didn't move. Not because she was frozen, but because movement would escalate the situation faster than Toren could comprehend. Instead, she let her breath fall into the familiar rhythm she learned as a child hiding from Razorbeast's packs, slow, steady, nearly silent. Back off, Toren, another student muttered. Leave her alone. She's not like us. He ignored them. Look at you, he said, circling her table. So fragile. I could break your arm just by grabbing it. Isn't that right? Mara looked at him. Really looked. Past his bravado. Past his laughter. Past the surface hostility he thought made him intimidating. At the rapid pulse under his throat ridge, the stiff set of his knees, the shallow breathing he didn't notice he was doing. He was bluffing. He was scared. And scared people made dangerous mistakes. Toren, Mara said softly. Don't test me. He laughed again, louder, harsher, trying to mask something he didn't understand. That was the last laugh he ever made at her expense. When he lunged, it wasn't a punch or a grab. It was a frustrated shove, the kind kids do instinctively in dominance games. But on Arithon Station's smooth, low-grav floors, a shove could send someone flying into a support column hard enough to break bone. And Mara knew that. In a single motion, she stepped aside, caught his arm, and pressed 2 fingers into the small nerve cluster hidden behind his forearm ridge. It wasn't an attack. It was a Terran survival reflex, one designed for creatures far stronger and faster than Toren. The effect was instantaneous. Toren collapsed to his knees, eyes wide, unable to move his hand. Not in pain, just stunned, his muscles locked by a gentle pressure that lasted only a breath. Students gasped. One dropped their holopad. Someone whispered, "What did she do?" Mara released him immediately. "This," she said quietly, "was your second warning." She stepped away from him, heart pounding, not from exertion, but from the terrified realization that she had just shown too much. Too fast. Too clearly. The dome was silent. Even the floating lights seemed to dim. And every student present understood that whatever Mara was, she was not fragile. She was not prey. She was not what they thought a human could be. And Toren, shaking, breathless, unable to speak, would never laugh at her again. Toren didn't speak for nearly a full minute. His breath came in short, confused bursts, as if his body was trying to remember how to be angry and failing. Students hovered around him, unsure whether to help or keep their distance from both of them. Mara didn't move. Not because she wanted to intimidate, but because movement might trigger another misunderstanding. Silence on Terra Prime meant danger. Silence here meant fear. Vesh finally broke it. "Everyone step back," the instructor said, his voice unnaturally steady. "Give him air." Toren swallowed and forced his limbs to obey him again. The paralysis faded in seconds, but the fear did not. He rose slowly, avoiding Mara's eyes like looking at her might trigger something he wasn't ready to see. "What did you do to me?" he whispered. Mara opened her mouth, then closed it. There was no explanation that wouldn't make things worse. No version of, "I saved you from cracking your skull," that his pride would survive. She lowered her head instead. "I didn't harm you." "That wasn't the question," he said, voice trembling with a mixture of fury and humiliation. The dome's doors slid open. A deep echo pulsed through the chamber, a tone reserved for station officials. 3 figures entered, cloaked in silver-black uniforms threaded with luminescent circuitry. Arithon Administration's security. Students straightened instantly, their faces tightening with the fear people only feel when authority arrives. Mara's pulse kicked once. The lead officer, a pale-skinned Lemurian with obsidian eyes, scanned the room. His gaze fixed on Toren first. "We received a disturbance report," he said. "Who initiated physical contact?" Toren hesitated. His pride and survival instinct battled visibly. He could blame Mara. He could lie. He could tell the truth and expose himself. His jaw clenched. "I did," he forced out. Murmurs rippled through the class. Even Vesha's feathers twitched in surprise. The officer turned to Mara. "Did you respond with force?" Mara shook her head. "I diverted his motion away from a support column." "That is still force," the officer replied. "Not harmful force," Mara said. "I prevented injury." Another officer, a slender Nethri with crystal-veined skin, stepped forward. "Your file notes advanced survival training." Mara stiffened. "Who accessed my file?" "It was flagged when you entered the station," the Nethri said. "Red zone citizens trigger automatic alerts. For safety. Both yours and others." A familiar ache curled in Mara's stomach. On Terra Prime, no one questioned her instincts. Off-world, those same instincts were treated like weapons she couldn't put down. The Lemurian officer gestured to her. "You will accompany us for debrief." Toren looked up sharply. "She didn't attack me." "Protocol remains," the officer said. "Red zone reflexes can escalate beyond control." Mara exhaled through her nose. She wasn't angry, she was tired. Tired of being studied. Tired of existing under suspicion. Tired of carrying a planet's reputation she never asked for. She stepped forward without resistance. But as she walked past Toren, he spoke. "Wait." Everyone paused. Toren's voice shook, not from fear, but something closer to shame. "I pushed her," he said. "Twice. She warned me. Twice. She only stopped me from hitting the pillar." The Lemurian officer tilted his head. "Does your statement imply she acted in self-defense?" "Yes." "And the second incident?" Toren swallowed. "My fault. All of it." Mara blinked, surprised. Nothing in Toren's earlier behavior suggested he had the humility for this. The class watched him with stunned silence. A Gravari admitting fault was rare. A Gravari defending the person who embarrassed him was unheard of. The officer studied Mara as if recalibrating his judgment. "Very well," he said. "You are not under disciplinary action. But you will still attend a safety evaluation." Mara nodded. "I expected that." The officers turned to leave. But before they reached the exit, the Nethri officer paused and faced the students. "Let this serve as a reminder," she said. "Red Zone citizens are not dangerous by nature. But their instincts are shaped by environments you cannot imagine. Respect that difference. Do not provoke what you do not understand." The class flinched collectively. The officers departed. Vesh exhaled shakily and dismissed everyone early. Students dispersed in hushed clusters, glancing back at Mara as if she were a riddle carved from something flammable. She gathered her bag and moved toward the exit, hoping, naively, that the day's chaos was done. It wasn't. Outside the dome, a narrow observation bridge curved along the station's inner hull. Through the transparent walls, Nebulae drifted in violet waves, scattering particles of starlight across the walkway. Mara walked carefully, keeping to the side, letting her heartbeat slow. A soft voice called behind her. Mara? She turned. Toren. But not the Toren from earlier, the loud, posturing, preening Grivari who needed an audience to breathe. This Toren approached slowly, without swagger, without confidence, without laughter. I shouldn't have touched you, he said immediately. Either time. Mara waited. Toren rubbed the back of his neck. I didn't know what a warning meant for you. You didn't listen, Mara said, not accusing, just stating a fact. I didn't understand, he corrected. Now I do. They stood under the shifting nebula light, two silhouettes divided by gravity, species, and worlds that shaped them differently. What did you do to my arm? Toren asked quietly. It's a pressure override, Mara said. A reflex technique. My people use it to neutralize animals that attack faster than we can outrun. Animals? Toren asked slowly. On your world? Yes. And you learned that as a child? Yes. Toren's expression shifted into something darker than fear, realization. The rest of us grow up safe. Sheltered. You grew up surviving. Mara didn't reply. For the first time since she'd arrived on Arithon Station, Toren didn't see a threat when he looked at her. He saw context. We're not the same, he whispered. Not even close. Mara's voice softened. I didn't come here to prove anything. I didn't come to scare anyone. I know, he said. And he meant it. The walkway lights pulsed, signaling shift transition. Students began filling the bridge again, some looking at Mara with caution, others with curiosity. Toren stepped aside to give her space, not out of fear, but respect. Mara, he said before she walked past him. Thank you for not hurting me. She nodded once. Just listen next time. He let out a small breath. I will. As Mara walked toward the lifts, watching the nebula swirl in silence, she realized something had changed. Not in Toren. Not in the class. In the station itself. Because word would spread. Rumors would grow. And every student aboard Arithon would eventually learn the same truth Toren had learned the hard way. The Deathworld girl gives only one warning. The second is the quiet one. And there is no third.